I'm going to try to keep this tight because I don't want to write a novel, but I also feel like if I leave parts out, people will assume the wrong thing. The issue is my wife Lauren, and how she talks about me when we're around her friends. It's been a pattern, and I think that's why it's messed with my head. If it was one horrible comment, I'd have something obvious to point to. Instead, it's like 1,000 little jokes that keep landing the same way. I'm incompetent, I'm childish, I'm lucky she puts up with me, I'm the weak link. The first time I really noticed it was at a birthday dinner for one of her friends. We were sitting with a group and someone asked how we split chores. I said something normal, like, we just handle whatever needs doing. Lauren cut in and laughed and said something like, yeah, except he thinks putting dishes next to the sink counts as doing dishes. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because what else do you do? But I remember feeling this weird heat in my chest, because it wasn't true. I do dishes all the time, and even if it was true, why was that the version of me she wanted to present to people? After that, I started hearing it everywhere. If I mentioned being tired, she'd say, he's always tired, it's his whole personality. If I told a story, she'd jump in and correct it, but in a way where I sounded like an idiot who couldn't remember basic facts. If someone complimented me on something work-related, she'd say, don't encourage him, he already thinks he's a genius. And then there were the more direct ones. Like if her friend's husband did something nice, Lauren would say, must be nice, I'm married to a golden retriever. Or she'd tell stories about me to get laughs, and they were always stories where I looked pathetic. Stuff I'd told her privately would come out as punchlines. One night I realized her friends weren't just laughing at her jokes. They were joining in. It had become normal to tease me. If I made a mistake ordering food, someone would say, careful, Lauren's going to have to raise him again. I know some people will read this and think, grow a thicker skin. I've thought that too. I'm not some delicate person who falls apart because someone makes a joke. The problem is that it was always the same direction. Always me being smaller so she could be bigger. And it was only around her friends, which made me feel like she had a version of me she performed. At home, she wasn't like this all the time. That's what made it confusing. At home, she could be affectionate, normal, even supportive. We'd have good days. We'd watch shows, cook dinner, talk about work. But the second we were in a group setting with her people, I became her material. The worst part is I started preloading myself for it. Like I'd go into a social situation already tense, waiting for the moment she'd take a shot at me. And because I was tense, I probably did come off awkward, which then made it easier to joke about. I tried to address it gently at first. After one night where she had made like 5 comments in a row about how I can't handle anything, I said in the car that it kind of hurt. I tried to keep it calm. I said something like, hey, when you joke about me like that in front of everyone, I feel embarrassed. She acted surprised, like genuinely confused. She said it was just how they all talk, that it's not that serious, that everyone teases everyone. She said I was taking it personally because I don't get her friends. I told her I'm not asking her to stop joking with her friends. I'm asking her to stop making me the target every time. She said, so what? You want me to lie and pretend you're perfect? That immediately pissed me off because it wasn't even the point. I told her it's not about being perfect. It's about respect. I said, there's a difference between teasing and consistently putting your partner down. She got defensive and said I was being dramatic. Then she flipped it and said I embarrass her too sometimes. She brought up random things like how I don't always dress nice enough for her friends, or how I can be quiet at dinner, which felt like she was just looking for ammo instead of hearing what I was saying. I dropped it because it was going nowhere. But I didn't forget it. Over the next few weeks, I tried another approach. I started paying attention to timing. I noticed she'd do it most when she wanted attention from the group. If the conversation drifted away from her, she'd pull it back with a funny story about me. That's when it started to feel less like accidental teasing and more like a habit. I also noticed she almost never did it around my friends or my family. Around them, she was polite, almost overly nice, which made it even clearer to me that she could control it. She just didn't see a reason to control it around her friends. There was one night that pushed me over the edge. We were at her friend Megan's place with a few couples. Megan asked about our finances because she and her husband were talking about buying a house. I said something about how we budget and we're saving for a down payment. Lauren laughed and said, yeah, because if it was up to him, He'd spend everything on hobbies and forget rent exists. Again, everyone laughed. And I just felt exposed, like I'd been stripped down to a caricature. Also, it was unfair. I'm not irresponsible. I have hobbies, yeah, but I pay my share. We're fine financially. But now I'm the guy who can't adult. I didn't even say anything in the moment. I just went quiet. Someone asked if I was okay, and I made an excuse about a headache. On the way home, Lauren was annoyed at me for being quiet. She said I killed the vibe. I told her I was tired, but she pushed. She said I was acting weird all night. So I told her the truth. I said I didn't appreciate what she said. I said it wasn't funny and it wasn't true. She immediately got defensive again. She said she was joking. She said I was making her feel like she had to walk on eggshells. She said it's exhausting being with someone who can't take a joke. That's when I snapped, honestly. I said something like, "Do you even like me?" Because that's what it felt like. Like she liked having a husband, but didn't actually like me as a person. She went silent for a bit and then said, "Of course I like you. Don't be ridiculous." But she didn't apologize. That's what stayed with me. She didn't even seem to consider that she might have crossed a line. It was all about how my reaction made her feel. That night I slept poorly. I kept replaying stuff in my head. Not just that night, but other moments. And the more I replayed it, the more I realized how much I'd been shrinking to avoid being laughed at. The next day I decided I wasn't going to do the hinting thing anymore. I needed to make it clear this was a real problem for me. So I asked her if we could talk. Like actually talk. Without phones. Without TV on. I told her I wasn't trying to police her humor. I told her I wasn't trying to make her feel controlled. I told her I was telling her something that was hurting me, and I needed her to take it seriously. Gave her specific examples. I said, "When you said I'm a golden retriever, when you said I'd spend everything on hobbies, when you said I can't handle anything," I said, "it makes me feel like you want your friends to see me as less than you." She tried to interrupt, and I said I wanted to finish. I told her the main thing. I feel disrespected. I feel like I'm being used to get laughs. I feel like her friends are starting to see me through that lens because she keeps reinforcing it. And then I said something that I think mattered. I said, "If someone else talked about me like that, you'd probably be offended. But because it's you, I'm supposed to just take it." She looked genuinely uncomfortable at that. For a minute, I thought she was going to blow up again, but instead she said, "I didn't realize it was that bad." She still tried to defend herself a little. She said her friends roast each other and she's used to that dynamic. She said she never meant it as, "I'm above you." She said she thought we were just being playful. I told her it wasn't playful for me anymore. I told her I'm not asking her to become a different person. I'm asking her to stop making me the constant punchline. Then I told her what the consequence was if it didn't change, because I think she needed to hear that. I said I can't spend the next 10 years being the guy she mocks for social points. I said resentment is building, and it's not sustainable. She got quiet. She asked if I was thinking about divorce. I said I wasn't threatening her. I said I'm trying to protect what we have. But yes, if the respect isn't there, what are we doing? That hit her, I could tell. She got emotional in a way she hadn't before. Not dramatic crying, but she looked shaken. She said she didn't want to lose me. She said she genuinely didn't realize how humiliating it felt. She said she thought I was in on it, because I laughed along sometimes. I told her I laughed because I didn't want to look fragile in front of her friends. I told her it's not like I can call a timeout in the middle of dinner and say, "Hey everyone, my wife's disrespecting me." That made her nod, like it clicked. She apologized. It wasn't perfect, but it was the first actual apology I'd gotten. She said she was sorry for making me feel small. She said she didn't want to be that person. She said she'd do better. I wanted to believe it. And honestly, I did believe she meant it in that moment. We came up with something practical. I told her I'm not expecting perfection overnight, but I asked for 2 things. She stops making negative jokes about me in front of other people, especially about things that aren't even true. If she slips, she corrects it in the moment, not by making it awkward, but by not letting it sit like it's the truth. She asked what she should do if she's annoyed with something I do. I said she can tell me privately later, like an adult, not turn it into a comedy bit. She agreed. And she suggested something I didn't expect. She said we should do couples therapy, not because we're broken, but because she wants to understand why she does it and how to stop. She said she grew up in a family where sarcasm was constant, and she didn't realize she was repeating it. That part actually made me feel hopeful, because it wasn't just, fine, I'll stop. It was, I want to fix this. The next few weeks were better. Not magically, but better. We went to one therapy session. The therapist basically asked us to describe what happens. Lauren admitted she tends to perform socially, and she likes making people laugh. She said she never thought of it as using me, but she could see how it would feel that way. The therapist asked why she chose me specifically as the target. Lauren said something that stung but was also honest. She said she feels safe with me. She knows I won't explode. She knows I'll stay, so it felt low risk. Hearing that was rough, because it basically confirmed I'd been absorbing it because I was the safe option. I told her that safe isn't supposed to mean available to be disrespected. I told her safety should make you kinder, not lazier. That session didn't solve everything, but it made the problem real, out loud, with a third person. And I think that mattered. Then came the real test. We had another social gathering with her friends. A holiday party. Normally I dread it. This time I was still anxious, but I wanted to see if things actually changed. At first it was fine. Conversation, drinks, whatever. Then someone made a comment about husbands being useless, and Megan looked at Lauren like she expected a joke. I watched Lauren hesitate for half a second, and then she said something normal. She didn't take the bait. She just shrugged and said, I don't know, I think we're pretty balanced. It was such a small thing, but it felt huge to me. Later on, I said something dumb, like a harmless mistake about a movie quote. Megan laughed and started to tease me, and Lauren didn't pile on. She actually backed me up. Not aggressively, just casually, like, he's not wrong, it's from the second movie. Again, small. But it changed the whole vibe. The group moved on. I wasn't the punchline. On the drive home, Lauren asked if I noticed. I said yes. I thanked her. I told her it made me feel respected. She said it was harder than she expected because it's like muscle memory for her, but she's trying. She said she realized she uses humor when she's nervous socially, and she doesn't want to use me as a shield anymore. That was the first time I felt like maybe we could actually fix it. But I'm not going to pretend it's all solved. She has slipped a few times. Once she made a comment about me being helpless with laundry, and I felt that same old sting. But this time she caught herself. She immediately said something like, "That sounded mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it like that." And she moved on. It wasn't perfect, but the fact she corrected herself in real time mattered more than if she had never slipped. Because it showed she was aware. I'm also working on my side of it. Therapy made me realize I avoid conflict more than I thought. I've been swallowing things to keep peace, and then it turns into resentment. I'm trying to be more direct, earlier, before it becomes a big issue. Another thing we talked about is why she feels the need to perform so hard around her friends. It turns out she feels judged by them more than she admits. She wants to be the funny one, the cool one, the one who has the entertaining marriage, and she thought making jokes about me made her seem more relatable. That's a messed up strategy, but it helps me understand it's not that she hates me, it's that she was insecure and coping badly. I'm still not over it though. I still get tense before social plans. I still catch myself scanning for the next joke. I still wonder what she says about me when I'm not there. Those thoughts don't shut off instantly just because she apologized. We're taking it slowly. We're doing more therapy. We're setting boundaries. I'm also paying attention to whether respect shows up in other areas. So far, it does. She's been more thoughtful. She checks in with me after group stuff. She's even called out her friends when they made jokes at my expense, which I honestly didn't expect. I'm posting this because I'm curious if anyone has dealt with this and actually recovered from it. Because most stories I see are like, my partner disrespects me, I left. And I get that. I've thought about leaving. I'm not naive about what disrespect can turn into. But I also know patterns can be learned, and maybe unlearned, if the person actually wants to change. Lauren is trying. I can see it. I can feel it. I guess what I want to know is it realistic to move forward from something like this without it poisoning everything? Or does it always come back? Update, 2 weeks later. A few people asked if she actually changed or if she just acted better for a week. So far, it hasn't been perfect, but it has been consistent. We went to 2 more gatherings. In one, she didn't make a single joke at my expense. In the other, she made one comment that could have gone that way, but she stopped herself and redirected. Later that night, she brought it up on her own and apologized again, without me prompting it. That was new. We also had a conversation about her friends. I told her I'm not trying to isolate her, but I'm not willing to be around people who treat me like the group's mascot. She agreed, and she said she's been noticing how her friend group bonds by tearing people down. She said she never questioned it because it felt normal. Now she's questioning it. Update: how it ended, for now. We're still together, but I'm not going to pretend it's just fixed. What's different now is that it's a shared problem instead of me quietly suffering and her acting like it's nothing. We decided on a few concrete things. If we're going to a bigger social event, we check in beforehand on how we want to show up as a team. If she feels the urge to make me a punchline, she's going to pause and ask herself why she needs that attention. If I feel embarrassed or disrespected, I'm going to say it after, clearly, instead of swallowing it. The biggest change is that she finally said something I needed to hear. That she doesn't want her friend's approval at the cost of my dignity. And then she backed it up with behavior. I'm still rebuilding my confidence in those settings, and I still have moments where I think, why did it take me this long to speak up? But I also feel something I haven't felt in a while, like my wife actually has my back. If this starts slipping back into the old pattern, I'm not going to keep tolerating it. But right now, we're trying. And for the first time, it feels like a real attempt, not just words.
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.